Hi, Jyoti. I am going to give you access for. Okay.
Yes, Rituji, you may start.
All right. So I have given you the admin, so you can admit people. Um, I believe, Nita, we can skip the introduction. We have already covered in session one, so it'll give us a little bit more time to focus on the issues. Share.
Hello.
Yes, I believe
Uh,
you are now host, and you have to allow me to share my screen. Jyoti.
it's showing disabled. For
Oh,
me, it's showing host disabled participant screen sharing.
okay.
Who is host?
Jyoti is host.
Okay, I'll just do that. Just give me a minute.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, done.
Okay.
So I'll make Dr. Neeta as the host also.
Sure.
Do that.
Okay, we go to part two. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I guess we are going to skip the introduction part, and there's the same set of participants. So, moving on to directly to the topics as we address some of the challenges in subcontinent, and especially preparing the youth workforce for global managerial roles, or have a career path that leads to that. So in this segment, we are going to look at some of those issues that we discussed in session one at our analysis. And this can be very interactive. After I'm done, we'll leave more time for Q&A and interaction with the participants to address their observations. However, I will try to kind of move through quickly through this first few slides. Is just a bigger picture of the issues, if you may. Okay, so moving on, I also want to make sure that you are able to hear my audio clearly. Um, okay, so I am looking from mostly the Western perspective. In that sense, is most of the studies that they are done in United States. So North America, the U.S., Canada, Mexico, the North American part. So most of the studies that I am focusing on in today's discussion are U.S. and some parts of the West. So this is a snapshot done by a organization, Neil Howie and William Strauss. They define generations given the turn of the 20th century. The DI generation, the global World War I and II, The soldiers who fought in that, that's DI generation. 25s to 45s, that was during the Depression era, the Great Depression era. Uh, After World War finished, the soldiers came home, and the younger people who started their lives, it was in a totally different generation. And that's baby boomers, one of the the most productive generation of our lifetimes that we have observed them. Very conscientious, creative leaders that have come out of this generation. 65s and after Gen X, and then we move into people born in 80s to 2000. In that 2 decades, they're millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, and 2000 and after, known as Gen New Silent Generation. Okay, that's interesting, but yes, we'll talk about a little bit more. That's Gen Z, and how their learning styles are different, uh, regionally and globally, the type of challenges they faced from their predecessors, the type of environments that they had available to them, how the external environment had shaped their minds, their psyche, and their development process. So, all that are part of this conversation. So the last slide was pretty much the US perspective. This is something I was able to find into. This is a global generational theory. Another company did a research. So this is something that we will not go into a whole lot of detail, but it's in a comparison from US to Asia, the Russia, Brazil, and UK. Something that's very common is between Gen X to Millennia Gen Y. That's across the board, except in China, they name it differently. They are pretty much uh, very similar definitions. Something that was a little bit humorous and interest was that in China, the millennials, the Gen Y, they're also called little emperors. I think that's my 2 cents here, my observation. I think this is the generation that have um, been very successful financially and have done different things there than their past previous generations. So this is something the recording would be available. You could take a look at it in more deeply. And just to kind of give you in US perspective, we have 5 generations in workplace, from traditionals to Gen Z. People in their 70s are working. If they are in good health, they do not take their age as their retirement. They're very active. They're active with nonprofit social causes, giving back to community, or working part time just to stay fit, mentally active. So traditionals, as you see, are part of workforce. Yes, they are. Gen Z, even though they are 20 or so, it's very common. When in mid-teen age, young boys and girls start working part-time jobs. They learn the value of money. They learn the value of time. They learn to appreciate the skill sets. And so you will see the Gen Z in a workplace also. So what does that create? Challenge for training and development folks. So we'll talk about it a little bit, but that's a US perspective. And I'm sure that in some cases, those same type of generational mix will be available in subcontinent as well. So when it comes to many different generations, there are many different talents. As we mentioned that they're grown up with some external events that shapes their psyche, shapes their mindset. I suppose Gen X, they grew up with a lot of technology and gadgets, nuclear families, parents working long hours, and children grew up pretty much by themselves and I'm talking about that's the US perspective. They grew up by themselves. They became more independent. They grew up with the technologies and gadgets. their mindset, their needs, their learning abilities are different than of their parents. So this is pretty much across all different generations. And so what do we need to understand? So they have, each generation has their own worldview. And that's pretty much global. So, and as the opportunities they get, the kind of environment presented threats to their safety or to their development or to their psychological development, how it impacts to the businesses meaning an organization's workplace, um, in the view of others. So that's a large conversation itself that presents a challenge as well as opportunities for trainers and mentors, especially the HR community of the organizations across the board. How do they look at the different generation in a workplace and how do they prepare them for productivity? And the training. Of course, there is a skill training, which is a hard skill, and there's also a cultural fit. Cultural fit meaning into workplace, and a culture as a social culture. We will get into that a little bit later. So if there are any questions, we definitely would like to engage you all in a conversation, but I think this is a very good view of looking at, even though it's a US perspective of the capabilities, challenges that each generation have with their learning styles. However, the human need and requirements are pretty similar, regardless of their social views. So again, I found a lot of good research done by many companies to present this to prep this presentation. How do we prepare 5 different generations into a workplace when their learning styles are different, their needs are different, their attention span is different? That's a huge challenge, and especially here in United States or in the West, we rely very heavily on technology, learning systems, and automation for training. As the budgets are cut, there is a less and a less in-person training. Younger workforce or any workforce, any age of workforce is required, mandatory required to take some of the trainings. This training is not just the professional development. This training is not just the skill development, hard product training. It is across the board, the compliance training, personal development, organizational culture fit, all various types of training are automated these days through the learning system, and they're required. They're required to be completed. So as relying very heavily on technology, where there's a little interaction, the need to develop these systems that meet the need of the learning styles and the generational gaps through delivering through technology is a huge challenge. And as I had mentioned that I have worked a couple of decades in technology space, learning systems, LMS, e-learning technologies has been part of my background as well. Rolling out global systems with the Fortune 500 companies where a lot of languages are implemented for different regions, the different parts of the world. So people who do not speak English and work for MNC, they can also take that training. So that's where I think I want to draw your attention to is to mind the gap topic is how do you address the training need of different generations who have very different worldview, different learning needs, different mindset about learning, which I hear from subcontinent people very often, that we have reached a certain age, we do not want the need to learn anything, we did our job. Well, if you're in a workplace, there is a need because you're working within a younger generations. You have to have that organizational fit. So that's a part of learning. And it's may not be a skill, hard skill, but it is still a professional skill that's needed in a workplace. And that goes for a younger generation as well. It's very critical. The younger generation who will be replacing some of the mid-management within the next 5 to 10 years, their need to work with the workforce of the previous generations, their way of looking at issues, their years of experiences in the workplace, which a younger workforce does not have. They may have a different education, they may be technically apt than their peers. However, they do not have the experience. So each generation has something to offer. And so working uh, in tandem, working in collaboration is what's needed when we look at multiple generation in workplace. There are some other facts I will not read, but this recording is available. There's another research. So looking at the broad traits, the second line from the top, these are some of from baby boomers, Gen X, and millennia, how things have changed. And the training and development and the human resource folks look at, because these are the three generations as a large part of the workforce. Baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. So, where baby boomers in a long working hours, the work ethics, and going to the younger generation, millennia, they are looking at more of diversity. They are looking at community services, how it helps humanity, how it helps the environment. So their focus are different. So when we're preparing for training, we're preparing for managers, we need to look at where their mindset is, what the exposure they have. The last couple of bullet points I would also look at here, education and money. Baby boomers had a very different need at that time after two world wars in the United States and Vietnam War and all that. The soldiers who were starting out back into the workplaces, uh, their mindset about families. And we look at Gen X who grew up with the technology and gadgets and nuclear families. Their mindset to blended families or they're all inclusive. They're the step brothers, sisters, or their inclusion mindset is very different than of their parents and grandparents. Um, Education, where baby boomers focused a lot on education. Younger generation is more looking into skills. They are looking into as a waste of expense. We spend hundreds and thousands of dollars for a 4-year graduation. That's the cost of buying a house to send your child to a college. And they come out of within a huge debt that people sometimes making these debt payments into their 40s. So looking at that, the younger generation sees more benefit in vocational training and in learning skills. They are technically literate, so they're looking into training themselves. One of the concept, I am not sure the trainers in subcontinent have come across this yet. We have here in the West is something called just-in-time training, because the training is delivered through technology. The technology of the learning systems is so advanced that workforce is given access to their role-based skills that they need, technical and non-technical, and they only engage in training when it's needed. So it becomes their discretion and the need. They would not sit in hours and days and weeks of finishing up training. They look at when I arrive to the next stage, I will train myself for next step. So that's the kind of mindset that I wanted to share with you, how we are looking at it here. Um, money, that's again very good because we talked about safety net um, in the last session. So the baby boomers mindset was the credit card, the plastic, the slang that goes with the plastic. They grew up with that. It was available. The option was available to them. So by now in debt, so they got into debt. Um, However, the younger generation we are looking at, they are not investing in expensive cars, expensive homes, or luxuries. They want worldview. They want to explore life. So their need to earn and spend is very different of their grandparents or parents' generation. So bear in mind why we are sharing this. This is the mindset, and this younger generation grew up with a lot of catastrophe in the West. Their tenacity, their brilliance, their ability, and the power that this younger generation brings to the workforce, environmental mindset, humanitarian mindset, benefiting the planet mindset, is so different than a generation before them. So they're not loyal to working with the same company for 40 years. Uh, the one really a common phrase goes with them is a gig economy. The younger generation is a gig economy or an invoice culture. So they would not really be working with a single employer for a long term. They are very specialized in their talent. Please pay attention to this as we are preparing for like looking at the subcontinent, how the rest of the world is preparing their workforce or the workforce needs are within a younger generation. Now, they specialize into a certain skill and they find their own employments and they will invoice meaning they will work on, I will do what you need me to do and I will send you an invoice. I'm not your employee. I am on my own. I make my own views. I have my own views. I do not comply to everything that you will enforce at me. I'm saying that in a nutshell because that's how this works. They're not bound by the company policies of employee engagement, et cetera, or any other internal policies the company may have set because they are contractors. Yes, they have to adhere to the guidelines and policies that are universal or regulatory compliance. Yes, tax laws, yes. However, they do not fit into that political environment of the company culture, and they because they choose not to. So this is my I cannot really give enough emphasis on this point only as we're looking at millennials and a Gen Z who will be in next 10 years or so will be leading the managerial roles, will leading from entry level jobs into managerial role. The kind of their psychological makeup is now. And when they interact with the other counterparts that English speaking young workforce that Asian countries would provide them, does this uh, counterparts have the same type of workforce readiness? I will address the same thought process in different ways. In my frequent travels to India, professionals I know, human resource people I know, before COVID, I had asked them, West is looking for to supply English-speaking workforce in next 10 to 15 years towards Asia. Asia meaning this is in a whole Asian peninsula, from China to India to subcontinent India to everything in the middle. and how is India preparing the younger workforce? I have, so often I have asked this question. I have gotten the impression that most people that I addressed this question did not were not even aware of it. Some who were aware of it, they had no answer. So I say that there is a huge need and there's a huge gap, and then you as a mentor, trainers, and training and development folks have this advantage now with your expertise and your experiences to shape them to meet the need of that global workforce that's going to be there. Now, let's talk about for a few seconds about the post-COVID economy. A lot of the things pre-COVID were addressed as far as the demand and supply goes. It would remain pretty much the same. However, it becomes more technically um, uh, advanced. The need will be there because now we are not able to move to different places because of the safety reasons, health reasons, cost reasons, technology, artificial intelligence, and big data, and all kinds of uh, innovations happening in automation people would be able to work from any part of the world. That doesn't change the need of that if we are sitting in some remote corner of the world, that we don't need those advanced skills. That does not change. That remains the same. So here's another one. I just want to be very mindful. Um, Here's one point that I want to mindful of spending my time on talking about this. All these slides are available to you. I want to put it out right here as the leadership styles of Gen X, Gen Y, to be determined. For all the trainers and developers, development folks out there, look at that. They are in their 20s, late 20s. They have not had those opportunities to be in leadership roles. This is your opportunity to prep them for leadership roles. So I just want to move on this one and leave more time for engaging with participants. Coming back to the Gen Y. So here are my thoughts. They grew up with technologies as I addressed. They had all the gadgets, the iPhones, the phones, and apps and everything else. And they communicate with abbreviated messages and emojis. Very little communication skills. Here in the U.S., we look at as humorously that people sitting in the same room and they are communicating on their phones to each other, sitting across the table. So that's really points to the need of communication or lack of communication that there is. The tolerance, I want it now. Everything is available, instant download, instant. Um, TV dinners, microwaves, everything instant. The product innovation, more and more companies are developing products that you can have everything now. We have Alexas and Siris, and so you don't have to get up. You can just, on your phone app, you can just have Alexa do it for you. Right. So that's kind of um, uh, a mindset that they have developed, that they don't have really much patience to work for something. It's a very collaborative culture. They are looking at the environment. They're looking at humanitarian causes. They find people anywhere that who collaborate with them and work with towards a common cause. So very collaborative generation. They're goal oriented. Um, they want something from their life. They want to contribute. They want to be remembered for. They want to work for something that's meaningful to them and relates to some of the social causes. And as they grew up with attack of 9/11, and so many, the meltdown and so many other uh, events that they have seen their parents go through it. They have seen companies, families being destroyed by those catastrophic economic and some other challenges. So they've become extremely tenacious. They don't have much tolerance, and they don't have the mindset of um, who you know, where you come from. They look at talent, they look at skill, they look at human being in general. Whereas in subcontinent, and I am sharing that as just my observations only, and that's bear in mind they are my observation and assumption. So yours could be very different. But the point to be noted here is that when I see the middle class and higher income families, the same generation uh, X and millennials, they're privileged youth. They had a very careful lifestyle. They had been handed over everything. We're comparing the two regions with the same generation. Something that I found very positive was that the younger generation has a lot of inclination to bring back their old tradition. So some of their grandparents' traditions. So they're longing for something more than technology. So they're very is family circle oriented, and they do have support available. While as in the West, most of these young people grew up by themselves, and their ability to be so independent is noteworthy. So let's move on to what global workforce is looking for, what's needed, who, where, and how, a cost of the lost opportunity. So where we talk about that in the subcontinent, here is the need for that uh, what's the cost of the opportunity, or if you lose that opportunity, what's the cost of it in a global workforce? um, that's in a really open conversation, more than the few minutes can manage here. So I just wanted to leave you with that thought process, what we need to start paying attention to. The training and development challenges. Oh, definitely. We talked about different culture, different uh, generations in a workplace. What kind of opportunities are there given the technology available to us? Given the demand and supply, India does offer a large educated, English-speaking, younger workforce. So there is the demand and there is a supply. The matching of the two is the question. What is flat? Now, in post-COVID world, we are still to experience yet how things in coming months and years would shape up. But there is a huge opportunity for all of us to prepare our younger workforce. Something that you hear so much in employee engagement, and you, as many people you would talk to, there would be a very different set of um, preferences you will get. And just to kind of break it down to the top, the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral skills, that is onset of the requirement of preparing global workforce. Either it's a transitional analysis, leadership skills, soft skills, regardless of how we phrase them, that is what is the makeup of those skills at the top of the technical or hard skills is needed from a younger workforce, and there is a huge need for that. There was a question: how can we prepare um, a, um, in a virtual world? We can, because we have technology available to us now. So I just want to mention that we have an upcoming course that will be starting on August 17th. There would be a 6-session course leading, the title is the your psychological makeup and professional successes, impacts and outcome. There's a 90-minute session, 6 sessions, and a 2-part. Dr. Alembur and I will be delivering this course. So if there is a more information needed, please reach out to any of us here, because our goal here is to help the trainers take this opportunity available to us to impact the development of a younger workforce into the leadership roles. So that's just a little bit more detail about what these sessions are. So these would be available to you. I will open the floor for any questions, comments, feedback. Please, Jyoti, you can unmute people if you have question.
Hi, Ritu, can you go to the previous slide, please? Yeah, thank you.
So the sections in blue color, that would be Dr. Paul, and section in orange, that would be followed up. So each section, each part that he's looking at on the transactional analysis and the makeup, the psychological makeup, I will be following up on part 2, the skill sets needed. And the skill set can be different at a different age group of the same person, or it could be just the generational gap, understanding how each generation works, how each generation learns, their learning styles, and the kind of opportunity available to them. Given that the whole scenario, we will be looking at challenges and the types of skills that are needed to prepare them for a global workforce, regional workforce, or especially helping them, no matter what they choose to do, excel in their lives, professionally and personally. Okay. Any questions? Nita, you have any question?
Can I take the floor?
Yes, ma'am, I'm having few questions, but other people are having few questions, no? Let's all first, we can talk another time also. Vijay sir is having some questions. Sir, you may ask it.
Hi, Ritu, is an excellent discussion, really like an eye opener, which we will not have experienced so far. Like now, we will probably take it into a different angle, perspective of understanding people, yeah, and so forth. Okay, the few question is what I like is what exactly you do prepare the young people for the global challenge. Is it the only the training what you provide, Ritu?
How do we prepare young people for global challenges? So now we look at from industry to industry. Very first thing is the mindset. We talked about in the first session, the herd mentality. If people are looking at the safety net and the herd mentality, what my friends are doing, I want to do that, then to change that mindset is the first thing, right? But there are a lot of gaps. There would be marine biology or space research or some other areas that there is not everyone is going to become a scientist, not everyone is going to become a leader. However, what we are trying to do is provide them with the right skill set, what they need to sustain themselves. We still need to see how the global market would sustain long-term employment of young people. It might be just gig economy for some. The 40-year job career in a single company may be very different for the younger generation. So if they are moving from one segment of the industry to another, there's a lot of transferable skills that they can take it with them. And that's where we need to look at to prepare them for. Those are leadership skills. Those are personal, professional development skills. Hard skills can be learned anytime. People learn on the job, but it is the mindset, it is the leadership, it is the accountability, resilience, as I mentioned, in the tenacity and the confidence of younger generation in the West has, because so much